Jackson. I'm a parishioner here at St. Paul's Episcopal and also a member of Jersey City Together. And I want to thank you all for being out on this rainy afternoon. It's great to see all your smiling faces. And as you know, we are here for a progress report for our city and for Trendy Management based on our action in March where we asked for specific changes in the way things are being done. Now, and in that period of time, we're going to go over two sections. One will be about the inspections of Trendy Management's properties that have been done and the housing violations that have been found. And the second part will be about the compliance with the rent control laws in Jersey City. And just to remind you how we got here, we began by knocking on doors in 65 of Trendy Management's 146 buildings. We spoke to hundreds of tenants there. We found horrible conditions, ceilings that were falling through and hadn't been repaired for 2 years, 80-year-old stoves that somehow it's not possible to replace, dead rodents in the hallways, and no management accountability, no way for tenants to contact anybody to come and make repairs, and rents that seem to be higher than they should have been. So on March 26th, we said enough is enough. And tenant leaders stepped forward, Trendy Management stepped forward, Jersey City Together stepped forward. We toured a building nearby that is one of their managed buildings, and Mayor Fulop agreed that things were bad and it was time to take action. Making bad actors accountable for what they're doing here. What we want is for the people of Jersey City to feel empowered, to feel like they have a stake, to feel like it's their city and they can step forward and have a decent place to live and representation in Jersey City. So today, we're going to ask some tough questions. We're going to demand leadership, not only from you here, but from our city officials, and give you a report on what remains to be done. First off, Trendy answered us after our last meeting and said they intended to rebuild trust with their tenants. They were just so upset about the reports they had. And as it's happened so far, I don't know if we can in good conscience say that that was a sincere statement. I don't know that we can say that they're really intending to rebuild trust. And also, what does it say about the city we live in that an organization like Trendy Management can operate with impunity with 146 buildings and not ever be held to account for 5 years? So we're going to go forward and explore these issues and see what kind of grades we're going to give and just let you know what's happened and what needs to continue to happen. So at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Father Tom Murphy and Bill Lillis.
So we could argue important people are here. But for over 2 years, we've had people from Jersey City Together knocking on doors, visiting housing, asking good questions. So if you have done that, you are important, and it's great that you are here as well. If this is your first time here for Jersey City Together, you're welcome. And again, thank you for coming.
That's right. Thank you.
But from my perspective, if you were going to ask who are the most important people in the room right now, who are the most powerful, who are the most courageous in this room, it's the tenant willing to stand up to Trendy Management. Yeah. What you do, what you say, you matter, you are important, you make Jersey City Together better, you make Jersey City better not only today, but for generations to come. I think that's what's going to happen. So we've acknowledged people who are in attendance, right? So, Mr. Murphy, I want to acknowledge the representative here from Trendy Management. Can we do that?
Ms. Kaplan, are you here today? Ms. Kaplan? Esther Kaplan? Not here.
But I do think Trendy Management is embarrassed, and that could be a contributing factor to why they're not here. And we encourage them, even though they're 0 for 1 in March, yes, 0 for 2 in June, we will continue to work with them, but I can't work with you if you're not here, right? So that is what we're looking to do, right? We want to work with our city officials. We want to work with the business sector. We want to work with the tenants and Jersey City together, all of us moving forward to create good, safe, affordable housing for the people of Jersey City.
Great. Thank you, Bill. So I think we mentioned that nobody from Trendy Management is here today, but the mayor is here. Mayor Fulop is here, and so we want to talk about what the city has done since we were here together back in March. And so you have in your packet of materials, you have a report from the Office of Tenant-Landlord Relations, which has an update of what has happened since the March 26th action. And we want to highlight a couple of statistics from that. I'm going to ask Bill to write these stats on the board up here. So number of violations. 1,304 housing code violations. 136 apartments failed health inspections. That's bad, right? It's bad. It's bad. But wait for it.
So say that again. What was that number?
The numbers are big. It's 1,304 housing code violations. 136 apartments failed health inspections.
136.
136. Got it?
Health violation.
Health violations. But
I don't think
they own about 140 buildings in the city of Jersey City, and only 35 of them have been inspected so far, and that's how many violations have already been discovered in only 35 of their buildings. And out of the 35 buildings that have been inspected, 7 of them have been re-inspected so far. So that's a lot, right? At least at first glance, that is a lot. But, and when I was a teacher, Bill was kind of a hard grader. When he was a teacher, I was kind of an easy grader. But even I really wouldn't be able to give a grade better than incomplete for this, right? We're not there yet. There is more to be done, certainly a whole lot more to be done by Trendy Management and more to be done by the city of Jersey City. But before we do that, we're going to hear from 2 tenants about the importance of continuing this work, and we're going to begin with Rosalie Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rosalie Brown. I live at 150 Belmont Avenue, one of Trendy Management's tenants. Since Jersey City Together took my case, I must say my living condition have improved greatly. All the problems I had in my apartment were solved. Maintenance workers have visited on a regular basis to make sure everything was in good working condition. This has never happened before. I can now call my apartment a home. This was all made possible because of the pressure that Jersey City Together put on my landlord to make sure all my issues were solved. So when you hear a knock on your door and you see Jersey City Together, please open your door, let them in. Don't be afraid because they have your back.
So that's great, right? Yeah. That's great. Wonderful for Ms. Brown. Thank you for that. And we need to applaud Trendy that they did the right thing, but I think we have to put a little asterisk next to this. Because the truth is, what was it, 3 members of the city council visited your apartment and saw for themselves? A lot of people. Everybody was through there. There was a lot of attention, So we would expect that Trendy would want to take care of this. And we wish we could say that they have taken care of everything in the same way, but that is sadly not the case. And to hear about that, we have another trendy tenant, Vernon Sessions.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Vernon Sessions. I moved 500 Garfield in the summer of 1986. For 5 years, I had not had any repairs, but into April, we had a state inspection, and in 4 days, I had major repairs done. I had a kitchen sink installed, faucet, leaky faucets in the bathroom installed, leaky ceiling installed, and in the 4 days while this was going on, I had to miss time from work, of course, to supervise everything, and to tell you that this is the flip side of it. I still have issues in the apartment. The faucet has rubber bushings leaking out of it, which I collected. They put a kitchen floor in, and it was most horrible job I ever saw. I couldn't use the kitchen for several days, and it's still a mess and stuff. They want to replace a stove I have, 80 years old, I believe it is. If you're familiar with the Honeymooners, my stove is the model after theirs I have in the apartment. I pointed out some electrical problems. They weren't able to resolve those issues. And I'm just here to say I like where I live at. I feel I shouldn't have to leave because of bad living conditions. And I think they get an F for the job they did in my apartment all the way around. Thank you.
Vernon, there were two parts of the story you left out, though. You got to tell, because I love them.
All right.
The hot and cold.
Oh, yeah. When they installed the kitchen sink, I don't see what's so hard, but they cross the lines from hot to cold, cold to hot, and that could be an issue if my son comes in and he thinks it's cold water, but it's hot water. And I talked to the repairmen about it, and they assured me that they fixed the problem. They left. Luckily, they left one of their power tools there. They had to come back, and I pointed out the kitchen floor and the faucet. And he says, well, we replaced it. It must be a defect. And he took out a knife scraper and say, well, when the glue hardens, you scrape the kitchen floor to get the glue up. And that's terrible, terrible. Thank you.
So we have a ways to go, right? Obviously a ways to go. So we're going to invite Mayor Fulop to come up. And we have a couple of questions for you. And this isn't a game of gotcha. You've been informed of these questions previously. Am I right?
Correct.
Yes. All right. So first question. Mr. Mayor, as you know, the buildings are supposed to be re-inspected after 30 days. Will you make sure that the first 35 buildings are all re-inspected by July 1?
Yes.
Yes. Second question.
That was too quick, Mr. Thank you very much.
It's unacceptable.
Let me just say that a thank you also to all of you for being at the last meeting. It really took a collective effort for you to bring to the attention the business practices of Trendy Management and how they were exploiting and taking advantage of Jersey City residents. I said it then, but I'll say it today, that there is no place for a corporation like that in Jersey City who exploits our residents here. And we will continue to be aggressive. We will follow up. Despite the fact they got lawyers and they're aggressive on their side, we will defend our residents the way that we believe that people should be defended, which is that everybody in this city should have a clean and safe place to live, period. I was disgusted when I went into those apartments, and I was embarrassed. And I said to myself when I left there that will never happen again, that I will walk into a residence like that and feel like that the city could do a better job. So we will go through every one of those Trendy Management buildings and make sure that they are inspected and re-inspected until the places are safe and clean and up to the standards that you all demand.
So, all right. Question 2. I have to give that a satisfactory if we're grading, yes? Right?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Mayor, as you know, there have not been any new inspections since mid-May. Will you make sure that all 105 remaining buildings are inspected by August 1st, with a re-inspection complete within 30 days as required?
So yes, we will target August 1st. We will start moving on it this week. If for any reason it falls behind that schedule, I will communicate that to Jersey City Together. But our commitment today is that we will set a goal of August 1st to have the remainder done. Can I sit down?
But one more.
All right.
Finally, we would like a transparent breakdown record of the buildings that have been inspected and the violations found by apartment. And once they're done, we'd like the next buildings to have the same report. When can we expect those reports from you?
So we met last week briefly with some of the leadership here, and we already asked for that. That should be dropped off this week. I will forward it to you right away as soon as we got it. And that should be itemizing the violations by unit and what type of violation that they were cited for. Each one has a different type of follow-up and cure, and we'll work hand in hand to make sure that the residents know what we've cited them for so that they are addressed.
Great.
Okay, thank
Great.
you.
So before we go into the second section of our meeting today, I just want to talk to you about a fabulous hidden secret of Jersey City, and that is that we have a very strong tenant-favorable rent control in place in this city. Any building built before 1978 and used continuously as an apartment building is subject to rent control. That gives the landlord a certain percentage of raises in rent increases per year. If an apartment is renovated, they need to present their documentation to the city, and they, again, can only raise the rents by a certain amount. It's approximately $200 per $11,000 worth of renovations that are made. They're very clear regulations. They're very tenant favorable. The catch-22 is that the only person who can complain about an illegal rent is the tenant, and the tenants don't know that there's rent control in Jersey City. So, in addition, every landlord is supposed to give an incoming tenant written notification of what the previous tenant was paying. So, yeah, if there is anything that looks a little fishy, they're alerted to go file. The landlord has to report annually to the city their rent rolls. Annually. They have to tell the city by building, by apartment, how much the rent is. So it's pretty easy to compare 2016 to 2015 and find out what has gone on. So with that sort of brief synopsis of what the regulations are, I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Lambert and Jill Josephson to go into what's happened in that area.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Diane. And thank you to all of you. We now are moving into part 2 of our action, looking at how Trendy Management and our city are doing in regard to upholding our strict rent control laws. I want to begin by saying that for us, this issue is at least as important, maybe even more important than the inspections and housing code violations, as egregious and awful as they are. Or maybe I should say that it is important in a different way. Here's why. Every single time a rent-controlled apartment becomes unrent-controlled, we lose a unit of affordable housing. And in a city that is in affordable housing crisis, we cannot lose any more units of affordable housing. Right now, more than 30,000 households in Jersey City are in housing distress. That's 30% of our city. That means that too much of their income is going towards their rent. That means that they could be one medical emergency, or one car accident, or one other large expense away from being evicted. That is too many vulnerable people. And that is not enough secure housing in Jersey City. We need to hold on to every single unit of affordable housing that we can, and so we need to enforce our good rent control laws as vigorously as we can. We're going to start by looking at the report from Mr. O'Day that is in the packet that we just looked at, that Jill is now holding up. And Jill is a professor at Rutgers University, and I want Jill, there are these two words on page 2 of this report that Jill is going to help us understand. Jill, can you help?
So when I read this letter, which is, it's titled Mayor's Task Force Inspections Report, it's on page 2. Look at the first paragraph on the second, look at the first paragraph on page 2, okay? And look at that phrase, substantial compliance. It's in the second sentence. The office also cross-checked the rents of tenants in the buildings against the office's records and found substantial compliance with the rent increase provisions of the Jersey City Rent Control Ordinance. Yeah. Exactly. So if you look at that paragraph, is there any evidence provided in that paragraph? No. So we do not believe that Trendy Management has shown substantial compliance. So one way that we know that they are not complying with the rent control law is because of a tenant that we met when we were door knocking. His name is Mohammed. We were knocking on doors, and we were asking people about how much rent they were paying. And one of the things that we've found as we've done door knocking is that the rents vary widely within the same building. So here's what we found when we dug in and looked at the detail. What we found is that Trendy Management has been violating not only the city rent control law, but also federal rent control laws. And they're doing it because they're using federal housing tenants, tenants who are receiving federal housing assistance, to raise the rent. Then they're pushing those tenants out, and then they're renting at market rate. So specifically in Mohammed's apartment, the rent, we looked at these rent rolls. The rent before the Section 8 tenant moved in 2015 was about $750, right? No, under the rent control law. So that was the amount under the rent control law, all right? That tenant moved out, and a new tenant moved in, and that tenant was receiving federal housing assistance. That tenant was a Section 8 tenant, and the rent was raised to $1,543. So from $700 to $1,500, almost $800, okay, for a federal housing voucher. That's our tax dollars being used, and that is in violation of the federal law. Now, we don't have federal officials here, but we do have city officials here, because what Trendy Management is claiming is that Section 8 tenants are exempt from the Jersey City rent control law. So what they're doing is they're using the federal law, the federal housing assistance program, to get around Jersey City's rent control law, and then they're pushing that Section 8 tenant out and putting the market at market rate. All right. So that is what happened to Mohammed in just 2 years. And as Pastor said, every time we lose a unit of affordable housing, and that's 30% of the city that's in housing stress. We can't afford that.
My name is Colin DeVries. I live at 150 Belmont Avenue. It's a rent-controlled apartment building owned by Trendy Management. And where at least one of my neighbors here tonight had been subjected to pretty extreme living conditions. I, on the other hand, live in an apartment that in that building that was vacant and renovated before I moved in. The rent before I moved in was $701, which, by the way, the landlord did not provide me upon request. I had to find out what the previous rent was other ways. I'm now paying $1,350. That is a 92% increase. Chapter 260 of the Jersey City Code covers rent control. There are packets in the back. Someone had. It provides a precise formula on how much the rent for a vacant rent-controlled apartment can be increased after a renovation. I have asked Trendy Management and the Division of Tenant-Landlord Relations for the proof that justifies a 92% increase in rent. I have been provided nothing. No documentation of the costs, no receipts. Trendy claims to have spent $38,000 in renovations for my apartment. Okay, show me the receipts. Chapter 260, Section 3, Part C, Paragraph 2, states, "It shall be the responsibility of the landlord to document to the Bureau of Rent Leveling and prove the cost of any capital improvements in vacant housing space for which he or she desires to increase the rental," end quote. Does a handwritten number on a form count as proof in Jersey City? One-page form. Is this substantial compliance? I guess I'm going to find out on my own as I'll be arguing my case before the Division of Tenant and Landlord Relations. What I want above all is fairness. I want the rule of law to mean something. There is a reason we have laws. It's to protect one another.
So, Mr. Mayor, we hope that you agree with us that this is unacceptable. It's unacceptable for a landlord. It's unacceptable for the city, and especially for a city with an affordable housing crisis. So our first question, Mr. Mayor, is will you state clearly that Section 8 housing or housing choice vouchers are not exempt from Jersey City's rent control law?
Yeah, so, and I made some notes up here as well. I'll just start by saying I do not believe that they are substantially compliant. I see the letter that Charles O'Day wrote. I certainly don't share that sentiment. I've seen it with my own eyes, and that is wholly unacceptable. I will, and the City Council, work together to close that loophole that existed on Section 8 housing. There is no reason that that should be exempt, and there's no reason that it should be exploited. We are committed to that. So, and we are committed. I just want to add one point on Section 8. We will follow up also with the state and federal HUD, which is the federal entities that monitor this Section 8. Coming from us, it may have more ability to move it forward, but if there's a violation of the law, Trendy should answer for it, and you could be looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars of theft. So we will follow up on that as well.
Will you also demand proof from Trendy for these 64 units in our packet? Will you ask them to provide receipts for how they've raised these 64 apartments for $300 or more in a year?
Yes, we've already asked for that, and that should be dropped off also this week, and we will forward that along as well to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay.